What's going on, everyone? Welcome to this broadcast. Mark DeJesus here, bringing you insights for your healing and freedom journey. I'm passionate about helping people in their mental, emotional, and relationship health. Today's video goes into some more on religious OCD. And if you're new to my materials, I have a lot of content on OCD-related battles. You can check out more by going to markdejesus.com/OCD help. You can also go to my main page and click on topics, where you can find more materials that will help you in your mental, emotional, relationship health journey. So let's talk about guilt and confession OCD, especially in the area when OCD gets into our spirituality and our faith walk. It's sometimes called scrupulosity. It's sometimes called religious OCD. But there becomes this pattern that develops and takes place. It's this compulsion of excessive confessing of something, some kind of thought pattern, some kind of behavior. There's a nagging sense something is not right within your stance with God or even with someone else, and there's this specific issue that creates a disturbance. Remember, with OCD, we become conditioned to chase disturbance. There's always a disturbance that's there, or then we're looking for one, or then we're just constantly trying to chase different disturbances. And especially in obsessive compulsive, there is the chasing of the disturbance of guilt and anxiety. Guilt and anxiety, guilt and anxiety, guilt and anxiety. And if you find that you struggle with OCD, you're going to find that anxiety and guilt are main forces of emotions that make you feel compelled to do things. And those become your compulsions. So we feel disturbed over something, then we feel the need to confess it. And we confess it to God. And confession to God is a powerful experience, providing it's done in a fruitful way. But with OCDers, it gets excessive, it gets distorted, and even the subject they're bringing up, it's like, this isn't something you need to be confessing. You're chasing something you don't need to be chasing. Confession in relationships is very, very powerful. The Bible talks about confess your trespasses one to another that you may be healed. But people with scrupulosity and OCD get distorted on that. They interpret that confess every single thought and emotion that you have in your life that isn't appropriate or isn't perfect or isn't just right so that you may be healed. And they get lost on tangents and distortions that create a lot of torment. And it gets disturbing in relationships because then they start confessing to someone else something they don't need to. It's created a distortion. And at first, it can create a lot of confusion in the other person. It might be a friend or it might be a spouse. Happens a lot of times in marriage, and you're talking out things that you don't need to. And then the other spouses, if they don't understand OCD, can be like, wait a second, what's going on? What's happening? You can end up going to a spiritual leader that you are confessing to, and then it becomes excessive, and you find yourself constantly needing to you're spinning out, and you constantly feel the need to get this confession, or you can't function. It's like I can't get to the place where I'm going to feel at peace. So what happens is when you have the obsession, and then you're constantly confessing it, you create this obsession compulsion loop now that becomes ingrained, and it tells your whole being, your mind, your emotions, that you must follow this disturbance whenever it arises. Because at first you go, you confess it, you feel better, and you feel like you go on with life. But then it comes up again, and then you feel the need to do it again, and then you become entangled in this now. You become entangled in this web that has convinced you down to a cellular level that this is a dangerous thing that I must deal with every time it pops up. So your fight or flight system gets programmed into it, right? So you constantly feel like there's a bear in the woods. There's a bear in the woods. I had that thought. This is a danger. I must confess, or else, right? We create these interpretations and these meanings that this issue must be dealt with. I found this in my life where first of all, my prayer life, as long as I can remember, consisted of me trying to fix this sense of disturbance that I was separated from God, separated from his love. So I remember as a young child and even as a teenager confessing to God any sins I could think of, because I just felt this distance. And my faith conditioning taught me, you got to get right with God. You got to get right with God. You got to get right with God. And then it led to me trying to get resaved and do my salvation over. And then it was like trying to cleanse out all my bad thoughts or unclean thoughts or dirty thoughts or anything I said or did. So I spent I would say most, if not all, of my prayer time that I would try to connect with God, repenting and asking for forgiveness of things. Then it would move on to confessing to someone else as I got older. I remember my single years where there'd be these just strange moments where I would feel like if I had some thoughts that I had, or if I watched something that was inappropriate, or whether it was on TV or online, I would feel this need to confess it, and I wouldn't feel peace unless I did that. Then it would later on move into confessing or repenting over things I felt bad about, but then I would share it with the person and they were like, "No, you're all right." It was it was at some of those stages. And then I found in marriage that I found myself confessing things to my wife, even thoughts or certain interpretations or emotions, and I could see over time this isn't healthy. Something is not right in this pattern. And it caused me to recognize that OCD has been influencing me for quite some time. So where this guilt confession starts with is it starts with toxic guilt, which is the emotion of I feel bad. And OCDers have a deep response to guilt. They are very easily triggered by the emotion of I feel bad because for whatever reason, there's various reasons, they haven't been rooted in the power of unconditional love. So they look to feel loved and safe by making sure they eliminate any sense of guilt in their life. So they become driven by perfectionism. I got to make sure things are just right. My thoughts are just right. So an OCDer is perfectionistically chasing any sense, any scrap, or any speck of impurities, anything wrong. And then what happens is this perfectionistic tendency even gets further off the rails, where they're looking for things that aren't even there, but they feel them, because guilt is a very strong presence in your life. And if you feel like you struggle with guilt confession, you're going to have to learn to detox guilt as a driving force in your life. So it starts with guilt. You respond to guilt. You look for guilt. You chase guilt. Your life is driven by guilt. Even when guilt is not there, then guilt comes in because you feel bad for not having guilt. Try thinking that sentence over again. So you feel bad about something you did, or you feel bad about something you think you did, or maybe I did do and I don't know it. Or then it drills down deeper. You have guilt over a thought you had. And there becomes this thought-action fusion that psychology talks about, where having a thought and it passing through means the same thing as though you did it. You merge those concepts. You always feel like if a thought appears, it means you did it. Or you have a certain interpretation over a thought you have. And many people can have this in the arena of sexual thoughts, impure thoughts, right? Or you're scrolling on your phone and there's something inappropriate that comes through in your feed, and maybe you pause for a second, or maybe you look and there's a guilty thought that says you wanted that and you've sinned, and it like just hits you. And then you're disturbed by the guilt and you can't move on because you feel like you're guilty of something. And then having a thought means I did it, I'm guilty, I have this sin, and you confess it, and the other person's like, wait, what's going on? What's happening? And you're magnifying and catastrophizing sin. OCDers have a very chronic pattern of magnifying sin and catastrophizing it in a way that's very, very distorted. And they might use scriptures and things, but the way that they're bringing it about does make other people go, That's out of context. Things are getting lost in translation here. So you feel, confess to God, you confess to someone else, and that becomes your compulsion. So the obsession is a guilt-driven thought, creates anxiety too, right? And interpretation comes in. You feel like you got to do something about it, so then you confess. So what do we do about this? Well, I talk about the 7 distortions, and I think that's where we always have to start with, because as a compulsive person, you're going to have to realize you're going to be obsessed with the subject. And many people will write to me and go, yeah, but Mark, what about this thing? And they want to give me their examples. No, but what about this? But what about this? Well, what about this? And it's just going to lead you on a nonstop tangent that's never going to resolve. You have to realize you're obsessive, compulsive, and guilt is a driving force in your life. And you're uncomfortable with unconditional love. If unconditional love flew out of the sky and landed on and collapsed on top of you, you would still find a way to weasel your way out of it, to go grab onto guilt, because it's tormenting, but guilt is familiar. You follow it, and it's very toxic in your life. Of course, there's normal everyday guilt in the sense of feeling bad. You go off on somebody and you yell and scream. And you go, you know what, that wasn't right and appropriate. But with OCD, it drills down to, even if you had an angry thought in that moment, you feel the need to confess that. It gets down to even thoughts and emotions that pass through. And so there is times where we make amends in relationship, but with guilt confession, you're doing it in a way that is, you're constantly following disturbance. And the thing that I want to bring out to you about guilt is, first of all, guilt is not God's way of dealing with you on a daily basis. And this, I think this is a newsflash for many believers. It was for me, because I felt like every time I felt that guilt, I felt like it was God. In fact, every time I felt anxiety, I felt like this was God. And it took me some renewal to realize this isn't God. The Bible talks about there is no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. God is not using condemnation as his operating mechanism on how he is speaking to you on a daily basis. Condemnation puts you in a court of law. It puts you in where you are found guilty with punishment following. That's pretty much what condemning means. We're finding a fault in you. We're finding a flaw, a fault. We're bringing an accusation to it, and we are bringing you punishment. And OCDers have a punishment-based relationship with God. And the truth is, every single human on the planet, if you keep pushing yourself into a core of spiritual law, you will always be found guilty. You will always lose. There is no way, and many people attempt to, in their self-righteousness, to try to feel better about their ways. You're still guilty. Sorry, you haven't fulfilled the whole law. And this is why we need Jesus Christ. This is why we need grace. And OCDers struggle with the grace of God because they feel there's conditions that need to be met before they can be okay. And they don't realize the power of God's grace. They want rules that are very black and white in their thinking. Their punishment-based relationship with God, and what I'm going to show you in a minute, is when you drill down to their heart, they actually have a punishment-based relationship with themselves. Guilt confessor OCDers have held themselves in contempt. So they put themselves in court and have conditioned to accuse, shame, guilt, and judge themselves. Accuse brings an accusation of a condemnation. Shame, well, I'll get to guilt first, then shame. Guilt talks about your behavior, that you've done something wrong. The more you feed that, the more it grows. And every single one of us, if we wanted to look for a flaw, you're going to be able to find it. And the devil loves to just roll up his sleeves because he is the accuser. He loves the court of law because in there, he's always going to win, and he's always going to find fault. And so accusations brought, guilt's brought, you've done something wrong. Then shame says you are something wrong. Shame is that feeling of just, oh my goodness, you have those memories, right? And you just feel this blanket come over you that you just want to take a shower, you want to hide, and it's just, this disturbance rises up in you. And then the sense of judgment. And this is where God is judging me. And this is where this intense sense of God's anger and wrath rises up. It's all coming out of distortion. And so guilt lures us into this court of law, and you hold yourself, and many feel that this is God's way of speaking. But notice where the fruit goes. It leads us to more bondage. And some days you might feel a little bit better, but what's the basis of it? Because you did okay, because you did something. Now you're okay because of what you did. So it constantly teaches conditional love. And then you get into a pattern where not only are you serving guilt, but then you're checking for things to feel guilty on. You catching this? You follow the voice of I feel bad. When I walk people through freedom of guilt, I help them to realize when I say this guilt is not of God and guilt is not a healthy main pattern to live by. Number one, guilt is manipulative. If I guilt you, I'm going to use passive-aggressive techniques to make you feel bad to get you to do something, right? You ever guilt someone? They show up late and you go, hey, nice of you to show up on time. I guess you really don't care about this, right? What am I doing? Inducing guilt to you to get you to, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And then to get you to change out of guilt, right? And guilt is, and God is not manipulative. God's not a puppet master. He's not forcing his ways upon you. And he's not going to insecurely manipulate your emotions. Here's another thing that is a straight truth that I've learned in the journey, especially with OCD. This is very, very true. Guilt makes you very self-focused. Is it really about making the relationship with God grow, a relationship with somebody else grow and improve? But it's really about me. It's about me feeling better. So we become like drug addicts chasing this. And for many who write to me or I've done sessions with me, they get so lost in this, they literally cannot hear what I'm saying. So it actually becomes very, very difficult until you come to the kind of the end of yourself and the end of the rope with this of, okay, this is OCD and I need teaching, I need help. It's actually going to be hard for a therapist, a counselor, a coach, a pastor, a helper, a friend to even speak truth into areas of your life because you're not listening. You're focused on the subject that has taken center stage and everything else becomes like Charlie Brown's teacher. And I can see it when I'm looking in their eyes and it's like they're just not really, there's a glaze over them. They're not really hearing what I'm saying. And many times I want to go, okay, so we're gonna take a break right now. We'll come back another time to this. And I will actually pause instruction I'm giving because I realize it's not hitting home. They're obsessed over the thing that they're disturbed over. And so guilt is manipulative. Guilt makes you very self-focused. Even when you apologize in relationships, right? Is it healthy to do that? Yes, in proper context. But for OCDers, it's really about, I need to feel better. Oh, and then they respond and go, oh, it's okay, it's okay. Oh, I feel better. And we're still focused on ourselves. This pattern can make relationships very codependent. And codependency can start to happen. We become pleasers. We're getting lost in just trying to make sure everything's okay. And really, it's about me feeling better, right? When there's healthy, healing, restorative, even confession in relationships where, hey, you know what? I've not been treating you in the way that you need to be treated, and I need to work on that, and I want to grow in that. There are sober moments where that's done, but not this compulsive guilt where I've got this feeling, I got to get it off my chest. And then we're obsessively texting or calling or checking on someone, make sure things are okay, right? And I went into that too in another video I did about relationships and how we get obsessive with how we're checking on relationships. Now, I'll bring back here into confession. There's more like, can I confess too much? I did a video on that too that you can check out. But chasing guilt distracts me from getting to the core issue. So maybe, for example, you feel guilty and the need to confess because you had a sexual thought cross your mind. So therefore you feel the need to confess it to God, confess it to someone else. So you think that's the problem. The problem is I'm a sexual deviant of whatever it is. I don't care what kind of thought. Okay, because there's thousands and thousands of categories of thoughts in this area, right? The problem is not the problem. The problem is the perfectionistic stance that you hold to yourself over your thoughts and your uncomfortable way you interpret your discomfort with these thoughts, and you don't know how to experience unconditional love in the presence of these thoughts. We have to start getting to what the problem really is. And so with guilt confession, let me put the slide up. The guilt confession needs work in all 7 areas. Because number 1, you're a perfectionist. You look for flaws in your thinking. You look for flaws in your emotions. You detect them. When they rise up, you get triggered by them. It's not just right. I got to make sure I'm just right with God and just right in my thoughts. So number 1, you'll have to deal with your perfectionistic tendencies. No allowance for flaws. So unconditional love is foreign to you. And God's loving you, loving you, loving you, loving you. And you're going, yeah, but. There's loving relationships around you. Can't receive it, can't receive it. Then there's the struggle with uncertainty. And this is the checking part. Well, what if I am this thought? What if what will happen? What if? All these uncertainties you start chasing now around this thought, because there's this mystery surrounding this thought that must be solved, that maybe this is an intention I have. Where guilt confession really gets off the rails is number 3, distorted meaning of your thoughts, how you interpret it. So you have a thought and you go, this means something about me. You're a married person, you see someone who's attractive, and you go, I've just committed adultery because I found them attractive. And then you're confessing to your spouse, I committed adultery and I need to confess this to you. And your spouse is going, wait, what? You cheated on me? And so there's this whole thing that happens and takes place instead of firing your interpreter and recognizing there's an attractive person. I see an attractive person. Look at that. Okay, moving on with life, right? And that's what it's really teaching us, is teaching us how to have a new relationship with our thoughts instead of catastrophizing every single area or in a certain category where this thing rises up. We actually, when it kicks up, need to be exposed to the anxiety and learn a new response to how we react to these thoughts. But instead, we get lost in interpretation here. And then we overestimate the threats. Oh, I saw an attractive person. It means this, and it means all these things. And this is where the catastrophizing happens. We're blowing this thing up. And it directly connects us to number 5. I got a responsibility. I got to do something about this. This is where the compulsion kicks in. I must do something. And what are you doing? You're actually avoiding what you need. Unconditional love that says you're okay where you are. Self-nurture. I can comfort myself. I'm all right. I don't have to serve this thought. I don't have to give into what it's saying. So then number 6, your control issues rise up. And guilt confessors don't always like to admit they have massive control issues. But that's your way to control. I confess this thing. Now I'm right with God. Now I'm right with myself. And then in the end, number 7, you're all over the place with your emotion. You're all over the place, and you're left with more confusion. You might feel momentary peace with your confession, but you're left with more confusion. And the core issue is, I must make sure I'm right so that I'm safe. And I must do these things, and if not, I'm going to be abandoned. I'm going to be left. God will leave me. People will leave me. They won't love me. Sometimes people feel like I got to get everything out, or else God will leave me, or a relationship will leave me. And so you're going to have to recognize this as an obsessive compulsive pattern, and you're going to have to starve the compulsion. When the obsession rises, you starve that compulsion of this constant confessing. And when you do that, things will get worse. You're going to feel more anxiety. You're going to feel more guilt. It's going to actually inflame it. You're going to feel like I'm going in the wrong direction, and all kinds of scriptures will come out of nowhere, and you're going to feel it rise up. And this is actually what I call the drug addict withdrawal stage. You're going to start feeling withdrawals, just like a cocaine addict. And your cocaine addiction is actually your compulsive behavior to the drug of the obsession that says, what's going on, this disturbance, you must do something about it. And so you're going to feel like a drug addict, and you're going to be squirming, and you're going to be going, oh, no, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't do this. And what I often tell people is say, You know what? If you're so tightly wound to the guilt confession, give it a day. Give it a day. And if tomorrow at the same time you feel the same way, then maybe, consider should. But a lot of times people say, you know what? The next day I didn't feel as much, but it was still there. And I go, starve it another day, another day, another day, another day. Because see, people I'm talking to here, this pattern, they do it quite often. Whenever it arises, they do it. And for many, they say, I gave it a week. Sometimes a week is a good time frame. And they go, you know what? It passed through. Sometimes people go, I gave it a week and I forgot about it. And so what it's also doing is it's training you to have self-control over your emotions. Because OCDers struggle with self-control. They're very compulsive. Compulsive means I'm doing something to fix a disturbance, right? And they can even be very impulsive, meaning they just do things without thinking. They're kind of all over the place, right? But compulsive is specifically, I react to any disturbance. And it takes self-control and takes practice to learn to be loving to yourself, because being compulsive is not loving to yourself. It's actually very hateful to yourself. It's self-destructive. It destroys your inner world. It even can destroy relationships because it creates a burden on people. And they're going, what are you talking about? What are you sharing? What are you doing? Now, in the freedom journey, you're learning. I'm starving this compulsion and I'm learning to be unconditionally loved. I feel all this goofiness inside of me. Anxiety, guilt, confusion. I'm being tossed in all these places. And now it's time to actually heal because the compulsion was distracting you. So now I'm actually going to work through my healing, because now as I push aside the compulsion and say, not going there, where should I go? You start to become more aware of what's really going on, the emptiness in your life, maybe the depression you're going through. You're going to learn over time the things you need to grieve in your life you never grieved, the trauma in your life that was never addressed, the areas in your life that are needing the tender love and grace of God, but compulsions blocked you from seeing it because you would obsess, compulse, obsess, compulse, obsess, compulse, and you wouldn't see underneath the layers of what was really going on. So you're starving this compulsion, and then there's like this, well, what if God's doing something? What if he's saying something? And over time, people start to learn. I see them say, I realize this isn't God. This is not God speaking. And I'll say, okay, you still struggling with it? Yes. So, okay, God was like kind of the first level, but really what it's revealing is this is revealing how you relate to yourself. Now we're getting to ground zero. Now we're getting to the core area of how you see yourself, of when you look in the mirror, what do you see? How do you relate to your weaknesses, your flaws, your struggles? Now we're getting somewhere. Now we're getting somewhere. And this battleground affects people at so many different levels. I'll read to you an email question that was sent to me a while back, but this will kind of help you to see how it affects even in marriage. Someone wrote to me, would love if you would put a talk together on guilt confession and perhaps reassurance seeking, because that's part of the confession, is a need for reassurance. Tell me I'm okay. I need you to tell me I'm okay because I don't know how to tell myself I'm okay. Whew. Whew. Woo. I felt heaven on that one. I need you to tell me I'm okay because I don't know how to tell myself I'm okay. I don't know how to relate to myself. I need you to tell me I'm okay. So this has been a struggle of mine in this season, the last 7 months. I've had a come to Jesus moment with my past and all of the hidden sin I've been carrying in my life. Now I would say, is it a come to Jesus moment or is it a run to guilt moment? Right? Because sometimes we attribute this dump trucking our stuff. It's like, this is what Jesus is doing in my life. This is what, right? And there is times and seasons where people who have a chronic pattern of not sharing things at all and not dealing with things. And many OCDers, they interpret, that's me, I'm hiding. No, you think because you had a crossing thought the other day or you felt something that you're hiding something. They always feel like they're hiding. And I need to share this. I'm not walking in the light. I'm not walking in the light. I'm deceiving, right? So I had to come to Jesus moment with my past and all my hidden sin I've been carrying all my life. I confessed all my hidden sin and struggles I've been keeping to my wife. And we don't think, how does this serve our relationship? Is this really about me being compulsive right now? Now, there's times in marriage where you share in the journey or you're dating and as you get to know each other. But I remember like on my first or second date, I was wanting to like get everything out, right? So it's like, are you going to reject me? If you're going to reject me, just do it now. Just do it now. All right. And realize I'm uncomfortable with the process and journey of growing in relationship. I don't know what unconditional love is like. I'm filled with rejection wounds. Because if you see a part of me, so then it's funny how guilt confessors, they'll confess to somebody and it's like, it's not good enough. They go, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. I think I really wanted to do that thought. I go, all right. And someone goes, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, I need to tell you the detail about it. We just have to keep going more and more because it's this driving thought that you won't love me if you really know the sins of my life. Anyways, let me get back to this. I've been keeping to my wife and working on a journey of healing and rebuilding. During this season, it seems like almost every day I've been struggling with guilt confession. So now you see the pattern. Now he sees it. This is a pattern. This is OCD. I will think of something, a detail, another moment from my past, and feels like I have to address that exact thing with my wife. See, once you fed the monster, it keeps coming back, knocking on the door for more. Gives you a momentary moment of relief, right? But it secretly told you, whenever I'm giving you relief for 5 minutes, but next time I knock, you must obey me. And that's where this toxic guilt will just keep us on an obsessive compulsive ride. It's as if I'm trying to be perfect in my confession. Hot dog, you're on a good trail, because you're realizing the distortion. You're realizing, number one, perfectionism. Every OCDer has perfectionism. Every OCDer has perfectionism. I'm not a perfectionist. Yes, you are. I'm a perfectionist. Yes, you are. It's okay. It's okay. Because we're learning to be loved by our Father in heaven unconditionally because of what Jesus did, not because we got it all right and we get it all perfect and we got it all together. And OCDers are nuclear level perfectionists. They just have to come to terms with realizing it. Because your journey of healing is unconditional love. I'm okay and I'm loved in the midst of where I am now. Right? It's like I'm trying to be perfect in my confession and recovery, and I have something on my mind from my past, another detail she doesn't know about. I feel I have to confess it to her. This has been a struggle because it torments me almost daily, and I feel like things just keep popping up in my head. I've gone to her countless times now with details of things she has expressed to me. And she'll say, I didn't need to know that. You can stop thinking about that. And so when you get to that level, you're at DEFCON levels of like, have you seen the warning signs? Have you seen the warning signs? Have you seen the warning signs? Right? For some reason, the thoughts that are spiraling in my head about my past are tormenting me if I don't do something to address them. So this is really about you and your relationship with yourself. This isn't about you making your marriage better. This is about you relating to yourself. So I would encourage you, go back to that talks about healing from your past. Is the past bugging you? All stuff like that. And the shame teachings that I have, as well as OCD guilt stuff. And anyway, where am I here? I hate that I keep dragging my wife through this emotional roller coaster and constantly bringing things up to her, even though she already knows about that specific sin and trait that I was in bondage for so long. Right. Because you're heavy under the law. The law is like taken over. And when you give the law room, it'll take the whole territory. The details of those things are what get me stuck. Also, current issues of temptation and sin will happen. If I notice anything, I must tell my wife about it rather than just letting it go. Right. So you're actually in need to have a different relationship with your thoughts. And but first it's going to starve the compulsion. I've got to starve it, and I've got to learn to be unconditionally loved within this. And over time, people say, well, how do I know what to share or not? You learn over time. There's some days where you go, the drug is getting me, and I got to confess this, right? And you rebound again. You go, okay, I follow the drug. Okay, It's like when people have sugar addiction, right? And they go, that's it. I got to stop eating sugar. It's just, and day one, they're like, oh, I'm going to kill somebody. You know, they feel hypoglycemic. They feel like moody, right? And they go, forget it, and have some M&Ms. And the next day they go, yeah, I see how much that owns me. You know, I'm going to take another step. And so in the journey, you're learning to detox guilt. And when you detox guilt, I lived all my life listening to guilt. And as the more and more I got free from it, I felt this emptiness, deep emptiness. And when you recover an OCD, you'll feel deep emptiness, almost depression. I've gone through many stages of this, and I know it now enough to know, oh, okay, I'm in new territory. Because you're so used to the fog and smog of pollution, when the pollution gets out, you don't even know how to breathe. You have to actually get used to, wow, I'm actually loved. And now you start to experience freedom, and you can look at your battles now through a different lens, because you're like, my problem is I don't know how to be loved. My problem is I have so much performance, perfectionistic, law-based ways of relating to God. I relate to God by the rules. Give me the rules. Give me the rules. It's like I'm trying to live in Christ by the Old Testament law. And no wonder I'm frustrated. No wonder I'm confused. No wonder I'm in a place where I'm struggling with this. Now, you might go, okay, what are some resources? Well, I would say all the resources that I have in book material right now would be fantastic, but I would tell you, go to the OCD help page, because I need to exhort those. I have many people writing to me for help, writing to me in their struggles and battles. You gotta go through the materials, because your tendency is, I just got to get this area free and move on. Oh, I just want to move on with my life. No, it's not what's happening. You need to head into a new journey, and it's a new way of doing life, because these areas will keep poking and poking and poking until we start getting more to the root of the heart of what's going on. So I pray that this will add value to your journey and help encourage you in some freedom. If it's been a blessing to your life and for what you're working through, go to markdejesus.com, click on the donate button. We would appreciate you supporting these videos, materials, and resources. I look forward to sharing more stuff with you, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. But in the meantime, I'm out. I'll see you all. So be loved today. In all things, be loved. Let the truth set you free. Let's get out of this toxic guilt, and let's walk in some new levels of grace and freedom. Bless you. Love you.